Hey guys, Benny Bam coming at you strong here. We've always done a lot of Angels content and baseball content, obviously, because that's the main thing that I do in regards to sports media and all that kind of stuff as far as the Angels go. But I wanted to touch base on a few other things, expand the channel out a little bit because I do have thoughts on other things, and I have in the past been on different radio shows talking about NBA, NFL, MMA, other things like that because I do follow them all very closely, and at different times I've had expertise on different ones. And one of the ones I followed pretty closely all the time is WWE, obviously, from many different aspects of my life and being involved with different things involving wrestling, specifically pro wrestling, not Olympic wrestling. Obviously, you're talking about professional wrestling. And I just wanted to give some thoughts and feedback on the build that's going on right now for WrestleMania 40, comparing it to other WrestleManias, comparing it to what's going on with the current story. I will say the one thing I usually like to start on a positive note, but I will say the one thing I didn't really understand was the recent SmackDown segment involving. So basically, Cody and Roman had agreed through Paul Heyman to meet and not have anyone else with them, and then they both meet and have other people with them on SmackDown, which basically, I guess, is showing that they can't trust each other and that there's not going to be any kind of steadfast resolution as far as outside of the match, and that if there is bloodline rules, that nobody's going to be able to trust each other and stuff like that is kind of where they're building, because obviously there's two nights where there's going to be a tag match between the bloodline, being The Rock, who's painting himself now as the final boss, and obviously the tribal chief, which The Rock acknowledged is his tribal chief, um, with uh, with Roman, obviously. And if their team wins over Seth and Cody, the current world champion, and Cody, obviously the American Nightmare, who's trying to finish his story for the second consecutive year over Roman Reigns, that there would be a lot of different things going on with that. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we touch base on a lot of that different stuff. Um, so there are a bunch of different aspects that go into that with all the things that they've really built into this bloodline, including The Rock, including the bloodline build that's been going on for years now, as far as the whole Sami Zayn portion of that, the whole Jimmy and Jey Uso portion of that. There's actually other members of the bloodline that aren't even in WWE right now, whose contracts are either up or are currently freelancing, as far as the Simone Werewolf and Jacob Fatu and all of the other members that are currently coming up right now through different indies that you can see in places like TNA and I think it's GCW and a bunch of other places right now that are currently having kind of one-off matches with these guys there for extended periods of time or for short periods of time, doing one-off matches. If you're not currently watching indie wrestling right now, you are missing out, because indie wrestling right now is fantastic. And that's where all these guys like Osprey came from. That's where all these guys, Okada, kind of redeveloped himself through going back through the indies again. There's all kinds of other guys, like we talked about, the Simone Werewolf. There's all kinds of other guys, Skrilla the Great. There's all kinds of other guys that are coming up through there, and gals, of course, as well, that are really doing fantastic stuff. That's where Queen Eminata came from. That's where a lot of these other high level performers are coming from. And the difference is when you watch the indie shows, the action is fast and furious. They are doing spot after spot. They are really entertaining the crowds, because it's usually a smaller crowd in a smaller venue, and they are really going after it in that capacity. And that is fantastic to see, because it's really creative. The moves they come up with, how they're really taking traditional tropes, spots, and storylines and kind of turning them on their head and doing it in a new creative way. Because the truth of the matter is, in pro wrestling, there's only so many different spots and stories and things. So it really becomes being a creative, taking a creative twist on something that kind of exists. If you can find something that doesn't exist, it's great too, but there's very few things that haven't been done in pro wrestling. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to take it and twist it into something that makes it your own. And that's what the really good people that are coming up have done, whether that's in ring or out of ring, as far as promo work, mic work, all these different things that go on. And it's really interesting to see. I didn't really like the SmackDown segment that we were talking about a second ago, because they never touched each other, none of them. So there was just kind of this oh, let's build on neither one of us kept our word and it's just going to keep building, right? And I understand there's so many shows before you actually get to WrestleMania's 2 night event coming up in April. So there's all kinds of things that are kind of coming down with that and comparing it to other WrestleManias. There's been some other really good ones. WrestleMania 38 obviously was fantastic. 39 was good. And now with the post kind of Vince McMahon era happening where, they've got more ability, Kevin Dunn not being there. They've got a lot of things going on that are a little bit different as far as the visuals they're doing, the shots they're using, the storylines. Obviously, more recently, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, whether people know about it or not, these things are planned out. So, like all the promos The Rock has been doing on social media and using that to help them build is really smart because it's really in any business, it's smart because it's a free or minimally costly way to really get a lot of viewers in a hurry, especially when you already have as many followers and people on your platforms as WWE does, right? And plus, then The Rock has all of his own now from all of his own production work in Hollywood and acting and producing and directing and everything else that he's done. He's got all these other parts too now on top of wrestling where people go, oh, yeah, you used to be a wrestler, and forget that he was actually not just a wrestler. He's one of the biggest wrestlers, Mount Rushmore wrestlers, really of all time. And this heel character he has is really a rehash of the Nation of Domination character. And now he's taken it and molded it into the Bloodline because, whether it was them realizing that the Cody, The Rock taking Cody's place wasn't going to work just from a fan basis and the people that didn't like the fact that, they call him Cody Crybabies, but it's just funny that all this is played out this way. And I think it played out for the best because now you have this epic tag team match that leads into a Cody Roman match. Now, will Cody actually finish his story? It would be interesting to see him lose it 2 years in a row. So it seems like they're building and building and building to something like a crescendo of that. And it seems like Cody would go over or win, going over in the parlance of wrestling terminology with all the ways they use as far as kayfabe and how they disguise stories and try not to let things out. It's really hard to do in modern day because if anything gets out, it's going to get out and you're not going to be able to control that narrative, right? And it'll at least be a seed of something, just like with CM Punk showing up at Survivor Series. Like there was a seed of it, but they didn't let it get out completely. And so it still ended up being a great moment. They did kind of kill Randy Orton's return, but at the same time, Randy Orton's going to get over it and move on because he's that good and CM Punk is that good. So those guys are going to figure out a way to do that. And because it's what's best for business, and they're both going to end up making more money off of them both being there because of the appeal and the draw that they both have from all the fans they have over years. And now the cool thing about CM Punk is he pulls in some fans from AEW that maybe weren't as excited about what WWE was doing, but because he himself has now moved back over, some people are going to naturally follow him that are just CM Punk fans more so than just wrestling fans that like specifically what CM brings to the table, Phil Brooks. And he does bring a lot to the table. You can say whatever you want about CM Punk. The guy knows how to cut a promo. The guy knows how to be entertaining, and he's very aggressive about the way he does it. Even right now, I like the stuff that he's been releasing about, where his rehab is and how nobody can keep him in the WrestleMania, whether he's invited or not, or keep him out of it, whether he's invited or not. I think these are fantastic things that WWE is building. I don't really mind the cursing because for those of us that were big fans of the Attitude Era, which is when I grew up, really, I don't mind a little bit of cursing here and there. And obviously they have Raw and SmackDown and they kind of have PG versus PG-13 kind of thing going on with those two shows. And Raw has always been the more aggressive and adult content oriented show because it usually plays later at night and it's usually on cable as opposed to a national network like Fox on basic cable where they can kind of get away with a little bit more of that because it's understood that the audience is going to be more adult because of the time slot and because of everything that's going on. So I really enjoy all of those things about what WWE is doing right now. I still wonder sometimes what they're doing with some of it, but that's also part of the fun and ploy of it is that you don't know. And what I like about it is some of them I don't know where it's going. The Cody Roman thing, I think we all kind of know where it's going, but I hope I'm surprised by it, right? And that would be a nice curve by them to surprise us all about whatever ends up happening there. Now, as far as like Drew and Seth kind of on the side of that going on, I love what they've been doing with Drew. They built him up to be this kind of really petty heel guy that takes these stupid shots and is always kind of poking fun and at your weaknesses, like with CM Punk and with Seth and, talking about Seth wearing his, girl's clothes, and The Rock does the same thing and all of this kind of stuff where, he calls him the clown emoji and all this kind of stuff, which I love. I love all that stuff. And quite frankly, I don't really like what they're doing with Seth's character anyway. Right now he's a face and it's kind of, it's over with part of the audience, but I like the architect and that kind of Seth Rollins because he's so talented in the ring. But right now, he's kind of in this weird space where he just feels like if I'm not weird, people aren't going to like it. And I don't really understand that because he's so good that people would love it, But for some reason, they're doing this revolutionary thing, and maybe that's just what he wants to do. But it is kind of strange. And they naturally do a lot of builds where I don't know if you've ever noticed, but like as soon as Seth's promo is done or his matches are done and the show's not like over at that point, they'll go right into a Becky spot, which is interesting because obviously those two were married and have a kid and all that stuff and met in WWE. But it's almost like they're doing that directly to kind of poke at the audience, like, oh yeah, see, kind of thing. And it's kind of interesting how they're kind of molding the show together. Obviously now with different people in charge of the production and Vince not in everybody's ear and all of that, there's some other different things going on as far as the graphics they're using, as far as some of the transitions they use in the show and how they're kind of, deciphering this. They're kind of making it more like a real TV production, which is a good thing in a lot of ways. But, do you lose any of the kind of gritty wrestling, real stuff that you see in a place like AEW and TNA? Although TNA just got rid of the guy that kind of brought them back. And AEW at times seems kind of lost in building stories in the way that WWE is very good at. And that's also why WWE doesn't really seem to care when these big guys get released or something. And then, or like Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné goes to a place like AEW, it's because they go, well, if you don't know what to do, it's just like when Bret Hart went to WCW, like, well, you don't know what to do with them. So it doesn't matter, who you have, because you have to build the way that we build them. And that's what makes them. And that's true. WWE does that better than any other pro wrestling, organization there's ever been. They know how to build characters. They know how to do that. Doesn't always work. And not everything they try works. Sometimes they have one, you're like, ooh, that's a miss. That's not working at all. But ultimately it comes down to, what the majority of the fans want, what you're going to get clicks about. And if somebody hates something, it can be as purposeful from an attention and viewership standpoint as if they love it. Right. And a lot of times when you get that conflict between two groups is when it really blows up, because then that creates those conversations. So I love what WWE does as far as that goes. I love what they're doing right now with the Cody versus Rock and Roman. And, there's a respect factor there, but there's also a disrespect factor there about talking about each other's families and which families are, the head of the table as far as, Rhodes versus the Samoans and all this kind of stuff that's been going on back and forth there. And I love that even Dustin Rhodes, who's been employed by AEW for some time now, who obviously we all knew in WWE as Goldust, and has done so many more gimmicks. He was Seven, which was an Undertaker takeoff in WCW, has a famous pipe bomb kind of promo way before CM Punk did that, where he came out as Seven and said, this is ridiculous. I respect the guy that we're mimicking so much that I don't want to do this, like kind of thing going on. And if you don't know that, you can look it up on YouTube. He was Seven, and he only did it for like one show, and he came out, and it's the total Undertaker gimmick, but then it's Dustin Rhodes painted white in like an Undertaker type of outfit with the hat and everything. And you're kind of like, what is this? And sure enough, he can't even get through it, without pointing out how ridiculously disrespectful it is to the Undertaker to try to recreate what he does and assume that anybody can do that, because what made it was him. It's not the gimmick. Anybody else with that gimmick, it would have been stupid. Even like an Undertaker, a pallbearer, like what are we talking about? A cane as your, that's because they use the right people in the right positions, and that's what WWE does to create all these things. So those awesome things are fantastic. Hopefully we continue to see them. I want to see where it continues to build show by show, which is really what it is they're kind of incrementally building it up, and then it'll take a step back, and then take 2 steps forward, and la, 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 because later on they can use all these different things to help complete that story that they're telling. And I don't mean Cody's story. I mean the story that they tell at every WrestleMania about the main events, right? Where they can then take that montage and show you the build. And then it becomes really more of an entire production of something that's built over time with the fabric of it. It's just like real sports, only real sports obviously is not choreographed in that way. So it's not going to be able to be as complete of a story that makes as much cohesive sense. You just draw conclusions and try to pull them together in real sports, as opposed to, and I'm not somebody who goes, oh, well, the WWE's fake. I don't believe that. What these guys do physically is not fake. Trust me, it is not fake. It is really hard to go in there and run the ropes. It is really hard to take all these bumps that they're taking, and then to do that all within the conclusive part of a story that's still building and all this stuff. Because if you don't do it exactly right, it's not going to make the right amount of sense once you get to those payoff points within the story and within the audience. So love what they're doing overall. I love the fact that they're kind of going back to this era where they're not afraid to say this and say that. Obviously, Netflix is huge and it's not a super PG platform, so they can be a little bit more expressive with their language and expressive with all that, which I don't think cussing all the time is necessarily something that makes anything in particular really good. But when you drop a few emphasized words in a few, emphasized places, it can, add a little bit more gravity to the situation. And I think they're doing that really well. And so I'm wanting to continue to see this. They have a lot of great talent, WWE. I want to continue to see what they're doing with Orton and AJ Styles, this kind of dark AJ thing they're doing. I love AJ, looks better than ever. And he's obviously one of the most talented guys there's ever been in the ring. So I want to continue to see what they're going to do with that. A lot of the storylines they're trying to do right now with Bailey and the whole, the group and all of that kind of stuff, and her kind of betraying the group and then betraying her and blah, 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 is kind of cool. So, well, give me your thoughts, feedbacks below. Please make sure you like and subscribe to anything that you see on this channel, because that's going to help us grow and continue to bring you content and continue to have me upgrade everything around the content so that it's better and better and better as we go. So really appreciate your time, energy, guys. Fantastic stuff. Benny Bam, coming at you.